that the deepest darkness you will ever face is not in a cave, but in a heart that has forgotten its own light? Sit with me for a moment, and let an old man's words tend to the embers in your soul, for every spirit carries a story waiting to be kindled. I see you, young friend. I see the frustration in the clenching of your jaw, the weariness in your eyes as you stare at that blank page. You speak of the draft from the window, the ticking of the clock, the incessant buzzing of a single determined fly. You believe the world has conspired to silence your muse, that if only you could find the perfect, silent, sun-drenched room, your masterpiece would pour from you like a river. But the river you seek flows not from the world around you, but from the world within. Your struggle reminds me of a tapestry woven from 3 ancient threads, 3 tales I have gathered over a long life. Let me share them with you. The first thread is a simple one, a story of 2 men, Arthur and Samuel. They lived in cottages so close they could smell the bread baking in each other's kitchens. For years they were the best of friends, sharing tools, harvests, and laughter over their garden fence. But one autumn, a fierce wind tore a heavy branch from Arthur's oak tree, and it fell, crushing a section of Samuel's prize-winning rose bushes. No apology was offered, only a gruff complaint from Arthur about the storm. A seed of resentment was planted in Samuel's heart. The next week, when Samuel's dog dug up some of Arthur's carrots, Samuel did not mend the fence, but merely shrugged. This small act of defiance was all the water Arthur's own seed of resentment needed. The silence between them grew colder than the coming winter. Arthur, in his anger, built a tall, solid wooden fence where the friendly, low one had stood. It blocked the morning sun from Samuel's kitchen. In retaliation, Samuel dug a trench that diverted the small stream they shared, leaving Arthur's vegetable patch dry and cracked. They became prisoners in a fortress of their own making, their days consumed with plotting small acts of vengeance. They spent more energy fighting each other than they ever had helping one another. One year, a terrible blight swept through the region. It was a sickness of the crops that required a special, rare herb to cure, an herb that grew only on the high cliffs. To reach it, one man needed to hold the rope while the other climbed. Alone, neither could succeed. Arthur watched his garden wither. Samuel saw his potatoes rot in the ground. They stood on opposite sides of their spiteful wall, hungry and defeated, each realizing with a slow, dawning horror that the person they had harmed the most was themselves. In his moment of clarity, Arthur felt a wave of remorse so powerful it brought him to his knees. He had sacrificed a friendship, his peace, and now his sustenance, all for the sake of pride. That evening, he took a hammer and, with tears streaming down his face, began to tear down the fence he had built. Samuel heard the noise and came out, not with anger, but with a weary sadness in his eyes. He saw the regret in Arthur's face and, without a word, picked up his own hammer and began to help. They did not save their crops that year, but they saved something far more valuable: the bond between them. They learned that a wall built to keep a neighbor out only ever serves to lock yourself in. The second thread of our tapestry is one of greater courage, of a love that burns brighter than any curse. In a distant land, nestled in the shadow of a jagged mountain, was a place known as the Sunken Valley. It was once a paradise of flowers that glowed in the twilight, but it had fallen under the shadow of a bitter sorceress. She had trapped the valley's strongest hunters, including the father of a young man named Calin. While others despaired, Calin refused to surrender to grief. He was not a warrior, but a quiet boy with a fierce love for his father. This love became his shield and his sword. He set out alone for the mountain, his only provisions being a small loaf of bread and a heart full of unwavering resolve. The sorceress's magic was a web of despair. The path to her lair was guarded not by monsters, but by illusions of failure. As Calin climbed, the rocks whispered to him of his weakness. The wind howled with voices telling him to turn back. He saw visions of his father, old and gray, blaming him for not being strong enough. But with every taunt, Kaylin held on to a single, pure memory. His father's hand on his shoulder, the warmth of his smile, the sound of his laughter. This love was his anchor. When he finally reached the sorceress's icy sanctum, he found her not as a fearsome crone, but as a being made of shadow and regret. She offered him power, riches, anything he desired, if he would only abandon his quest. Kaylin looked at the witch and saw not evil, but a profound loneliness. He realized her power came from the love she had lost. He could not defeat her with anger or strength, so he offered the only thing he had of true value. He reached into his heart and offered up his most cherished memories of his father. The warmth, the laughter, the feeling of safety, and gave them freely to the sorceress. "Take these," he said. "Perhaps they will warm you more than this cold mountain." This selfless act, this weapon of pure kindness, was something her magic could not comprehend. The shadows recoiled. As the light of his memories filled the cavern, the curse shattered. The ice melted. The sunken valley bloomed into a riot of glowing color, and the trapped hunters, his father among them, found themselves free. Kaylin had sacrificed a part of himself, but in doing so, he had rescued everything he held dear. He taught his people that the greatest courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph of love over it. And that brings us to the third and final thread, the most delicate of all. It is the legend of the lotus seed. Once, there was a tiny, perfect seed nestled in a pristine, imperial garden. But a clumsy gardener swept it away with debris, and it was tossed into a ditch that flowed into a great, murky swamp. The seed found itself buried deep in the thick, foul-smelling mud at the bottom of the stagnant water. Above it was darkness. Around it was decay. It could have simply given up, accepted its fate, and rotted away into nothing. But deep within its tiny shell, there was a memory of light, an ancient, unwavering instinct to grow. It did not complain about the mud. It did not curse the darkness. It did not wait for the swamp to become a garden. It simply began to work. It sent a root down, deeper into the filth, not to become one with it, but to anchor itself. Then, it sent a single, determined shoot upward. The journey was long. It pushed through layers of silt and decomposing leaves, navigating the tangled roots of other plants. It fought its way, inch by inch, toward a faint glimmer it could sense far above. Finally, after a struggle that would have broken a lesser spirit, its bud broke the surface of the water. And there, under the warmth of the sun, it unfurled its petals. It bloomed into the most exquisite lotus flower, its petals a pristine, luminous white, untouched and unstained by the murky world from which it came. It did not merely survive its environment. It used the very mud that sought to bury it as the foundation for its own glorious transformation. It became a symbol of purity, of inner beauty, and of the profound truth that the most magnificent things can grow from the most unlikely of places. And so, young friend, we come back to you, to this room, and to the fly you despise. You see, you have become Arthur, building a wall of excuses between you and your work, blaming the fly for the silence on your page when the real barrier is the resentment in your own heart for your perceived imperfections. You have forgotten to be Kaylin, to find a purpose so strong, your love for writing, that no distraction, no challenge, no buzzing fly could ever truly stop you. And most importantly, you have forgotten that you are the lotus seed. This room, with its drafts and its noises, is your swamp. The blank page is your murky water. The fly is just a piece of decaying leaf floating by. They are not your prison. They are your proving ground. The creative spirit you seek is not in the perfect conditions you chase, but in the unwavering drive within you to reach for the light. Your responsibility is not to find a pristine garden, but to bloom where you are planted. The mud does not define the lotus. The fly does not define the writer. Only your response to them does. Stop waiting for the swamp to clear. Be the lotus. Rise through the mud and bloom. Thank you for listening. If these stories resonated with you, consider subscribing for more tales to warm the soul.